Let's see if this starts going so I can share the link with everybody. Maybe. There we go. Can grab that link. I don't want to hear myself talk. If y'all want to join, here is the YouTube link. All right. Bing. Do I really want the thumbnail? Ah, well, whatever. Doesn't matter. It is what it is. Okay. Let's get back into it, I guess. So, I'm starting this a little later than I would have normally because it took me the past hour to figure out what was wrong with my VPN. For some reason, I could not get linked up with Hack the Box. It was a nightmare. And then when I finally figured it out and what I needed to do, lo and behold, I had to go through the whole process of, at least I knew what I was doing with this broker box, but I had to go through the process of getting back into the user file. Because we got the user flag last time. It's been a minute since I've done this. I'm a little under the weather. I was traveling last week, so it's kind of been a little bit chaotic for me, but I needed to do a refresh of what I had completed last time. So I knew that I had gotten through with a certain CVE. I had gotten the user flag. We figured out all that stuff with just a recap. We opened a reverse, or we opened a simple server on our host machine. We hosted a file that we inputted a malicious, if you will, base64 command into this value field that would open a reverse shell. Then we went through and we executed our exploit on this ActiveMQ, this reverse or remote command execution. I want to say reverse for every R there is because, like that sounds like super nice. But executed our remote command execution and opened a reverse shell that now opened onto our netcat port, which we are listening to. So if I remember correctly, we found, I still have it up here. We found the user flag in this home ActiveMQ/user file. So now what Hack the Box wants us to do is we want to find the root flag. That's going to be a little bit more of like privilege escalation, kind of figuring out where you're at with your domain. Since I haven't been on this box in about 2 weeks, I'm just going to do some basic recon at first. Since I've already exploited the vulnerability that would allow us into the device, I'm going to go ahead and, I know what my present working directory is, so I don't need to do pwd, though if I would have opened a shell that only gave me the $sign, some shells that you open are only going to give you a $sign that's like right here. I would do pwd, which is present working directory, and that would tell me, where I'm at. Right now I know that I'm in opt, Apache, ActiveMQ, and the version number. So, and /bin. So I'm going to go through and look at, okay, I know that I am the user ActiveMQ, but I'm going to go and say, who am I? Ooh, I'm ActiveMQ. I'm this user. And then, from here, maybe I want to look at like what other users. Let's see if I can open like, let's see if I, see if I can open any of these things. I always like to target the Etsy files, past WD, shadow, just to see what I might have access to. And you might be like, why did you check shadow? Like, you're clearly not a root user. It's just a process. Like, just check everything and see what you might have access to. It's not going to hurt to type in, an extra 5 characters or so. It's not that big of a deal. So I am able to pull the pastwd file, and it's not password, it's pastwd, which is so like backwards to me, because I would think that like someone would have named the passwords hash file pastwd, but that's Etsy shadow. So from here, I see, I've got this active MQ user. I've got some user named Laurel. Whatever this information is worth to you, I don't see anything right off the bat that I have like a big attempt that I'm super interested in. I mean, you have like some of these like non-existent nobody user files, which you might be like, oh, that might be interesting. Well, we'll just go through the motions of like what is available that we can find immediately. And then if there's something else that we see that's kind of like off-putting, then we might, dive into that later. But for right now, what we're looking for is anything that can give us the opportunity to escalate privileges to a root user or to root itself. So I say a root user, that's like any individual that's going to be able to do sudo commands on, files, what have you. So whatever. So I think in my last one, I looked through and I had forgotten that I needed to get a user flag before I actually got the root flag. So I went to GTF opens. I'm just going to do a rehash of what I was looking for when I did that. Let's see. I cannot remember for the life of me at this given moment. I'm so stopped up with and so congested in the area that I live in is pine, like the pine tree. It's pine pollen season. So I'm really congested. I definitely feel like I'm floating on a fucking cloud right now. So, sometimes you just got to push through stuff. I didn't do this last night because I wanted to give myself a break. Because it was just exhausted. But tonight I figured, it's been about 2 weeks, so, let's just get at it. So you're going to look through. You can, like me, I'm having a brain fart right now, right? So, like, I know that I need to look for SUIDs and GUIDs. So I can just Google, like, how to look up SUIDs on Linux, and it'll give you a command. 9 times out of 10, the command that comes up on whatever the first thing you look up is going to get you what you need to find. So I have a specific command that I like to use. I can't think of it off the top of my head because I'm just in a cloud of fog right now. But that doesn't mean that there's not 100 ways to do it. I like this one. Find anything in any directory with the permissions of 4000, which is the SUID set. So let's just use that. And it is totally okay if you have a brain fart. We all don't know all of these things all the time. I can sit and tell you how to find the SUID, 9 times out of 10, but there's a couple of times where I'm like working on another project that I don't necessarily remember what, like the command is for something, and I might have done it 100,000 times, but it is just like, I don't know. It just happens. It is what it is. So you can feel free to use Google if you forget what you're looking for. I clearly knew it last time. I don't know it now. It's been 2 weeks. Like, this is like a language. You lose it. So that didn't come up anything in our current file. So I'm just, ooh, you can't use up and down arrows on here. So I'm going to look in all of the files. I'm going to dev null out the errors with a 2 dev null because I don't want garbage. And hopefully this returns me some responses. It does. So basically what I mean by I don't want garbage is you're going to do find / you're finding everything in the / root directory. You're not going to have permission to that stuff as ActiveMQ. Therefore, you're going to get a lot of permission denieds. I don't want to see that on my screen. I know that my permission is denied. I know that I don't have access to that stuff. So what I'm doing is I want to do everything that I want to look through all of the files, right? But I don't want to see you tell me that I don't have permission to access some of these files. I just want you to tell me what I do have access to. So to caret /dev /null basically puts all of those permission denied or errors or whatever and puts it into dev null, which is basically like the void. And it basically says like, see you later, not going to deal with like any of these notifications. I just don't want them. And they don't get logged or anything. It's the void. Ugh. So that's what that is. So what I would do with this, I mentioned it in the previous video, is I'm going to look through all of the responses that I get. I'm not particularly concerned about user lib or whatever. What I am concerned about is user /bin. I'm going to look through these, names and see if any of them are, worth digging into. New group, G password, and then these are called SUIDs, which means that a special user, it's basically a special user permission that allows a certain or any user to use sudo or to act as root to do these certain commands. And these are vulnerabilities that you can exploit on Linux to do privilege escalation. So I would click SUID. I would also look for anything that I have here, new group, G password. Some of these I see right off the bat. I know that I'm not going to get because I've looked at these many a time. So I know that like G password's not one of them. SU definitely is not. New group, no. There's a couple that you might see like right off the bat that's like absolutely like that's what I would exploit. And I'm not seeing anything here. Let's do change shell. I don't see change shell. I see, the CSH, but that's not the same. You could exploit chmod. F user mount. I typically just go through just to mind my P's and Q's, even if I'm, there's a couple that I'm like, sure, absolutely not. Like, I'm not going to be able to exploit, that. But I try to go through the motions, even if I know that there's something that I don't see right off the bat is exploitable. I still try to go through the process because it's kind of that cockiness and that arrogance that gets you caught up and you might miss something really quickly. So yeah, I might recognize that someone or something is not necessarily what I need to be pursuing as far as like an exploit, but I still try to at least like go through the process. It's not going to take an additional, 30 seconds off my back to double check to make sure that some of the stuff that I assume is accurate. And then, we'll go from there. So those, I don't see anything that is exploitable from a SUID. Another thing that we can look at is, other ways to privesc. SUID's my first choice. you can go through GTFO bins and see what exactly you might find on like the specific target that you're on, and see if there's anything that you can do. Like you can do file write, file reads with root permissions, right? So you might be able to look at a file that root owns, right? You might be able to read it, but you have to do it in a specific way that's like manipulating the operating system, but you may not necessarily be able to transition into root. That's okay. Like the point is to get the root flag, and if you're doing it in a way that just happens to read the file, that is totally fine. Sometimes it's not that easy. So you kind of just have to go through the motions of, I mean, shoot, we can just look. Ooh. I had an advertisement just scream in my ear. I don't know if that translated over to the live stream, but that was obnoxious. I'm Googling Google. Oh my goodness. Let's do top ways to priv-esc. We know we're on a Linux box, so let's look top ways to priv-esc on Linux. And let's find a mildly reputable source. TCM has great stuff, but I don't want to watch a 2-hour, 3-hour video. But if you haven't looked at TCM security, their stuff is just top notch. They've got some serious good stuff. GitHub, Git Books, Git Lab, Medium, those are all great resources to look at. And you don't have to be discriminatory on the things that you are using as like professional references. Like you can look at all of the blogs on the internet, but those are the ones I typically gravitate to because I know that 9 times out of 10, they're going to be reputable content. They're going to be from technically proficient individuals just based on the stuff that I have seen come from those sources. So that's why I typically gravitate to those. But anybody that's got, a good setup like this, I mean, this looks like very clean, very pristine, very easy to read. You can tell that this person has, I lost connection to my, there we go. Ooh, hey, I got some people. My iPad keeps freezing on me, so I can't see any of the chat until you're not the only person to ever Google. I'm like thinking about Google in my head, and then I'm like, oh, like I should Google something, but then I'm just typing out like Google without actually, Googling what I need to Google. So anyway, so I'm glad to see the chat's working because I get frozen on my side display and I can't see if anybody is contributing, which I'm glad that I was not alone in, the fine/perm 400. Oh, and there's also a difference between like if you do a TAC 4,000, there's an extra 0. If you do a TAC 4000, that is including all of those permissions. That's like the at minimum permission. If you only do 400 and 4000, if you do 4,000, for example, you are only looking at the SUIDs that are only 4,000s. If you do a TAC 4,000, you're looking at all of the SUIDs that are at minimum permission 4,000, which means that the SUID is set for the user, but you can get other ones that have other SUIDs set. As long as the SUID is set for that user, you'll get all of the rest of them. But if you don't add that TAC or that /4000, the slash or the TAC is really what determines if you are getting the all-inclusive permissions, so user plus, user at minimum, or if you're just doing the number 4,000, you're only getting just the user stuff. You're not getting like anything that would be different. It's like, I don't know how to compare it, but it's at minimum versus like verbatim. That's the only thing that I want. So, okay. Now that I've figured out that the chat works and, I'm like kind of a basket case in this, let's go privilege escalation. So I already looked at SUIDs. You can go down and look through and see, there's 100 ways to do this. This is why people always, say, figure out your methodology, figure out what your A, B, and C is going to be when you're going on, doing the OSCP, doing the PNPT, figure out, I am going to look at SUIDs, and then I'm going to go look at kernel exploits, and then I'm going to go look at cron jobs and figure out what it works best for you. So you check all the boxes off of all of the things that you need to verify either do or do not exist on the system that you're working on. It sounds so goofy because people often are like, why are you recommending such a, I don't even know what to call it, what you would call like methodology in terms of like, it's not a technical concept. You're just creating like a step-by-step thing on what works for you. So I don't even know what like bin to categorize that in, but a lot of people are like, oh, I need to know how to do reverse shells. I need to know how to create a cron job or do all these things. It's like, yes, you do, but that knowledge without the methodology is like not very helpful when it comes to real life penetration testing and real life red teaming, and also your certification exams. It's just not helpful. You've got to figure out like the A, B, and C, or you're going to spend 4 hours on the same box when you need to do 5 other boxes, right? So, I say all that to say that, you have to have a playbook, like, and it's different for everybody because there are some people that are, much better at Windows exploitation and much better at Linux exploitation and much better at web app or mobile, whatever works for you, as long as you tick off all of the boxes on what your expectations for exploiting a system is. That's the most important thing, because if you don't have that, you're going to forget stuff. You're going to miss things that you should have easily been able to derive from your initial reconnaissance or your initial like entry onto the box. And then you start getting into, I think I mentioned it last time, where you're like second guessing yourself on like, did I do this right? Did I check everything? Where the flag could be like, if you're doing a CTF, it could be right in front of your face. And the same goes for red teaming or pen tests, like the vulnerability or whatever, credential that you're looking for. Like it could be right in front of your face, but you didn't open a specific file. And of course I'm like jabbering on and on. Now my Kali Linux is like, okay, bye. So now I gotta make that big again. So anyway, I digress, but your methodology is huge. So whether you are, how many times does it take for me to open this box bigger? Figure out your methodology, figure out what works for you, and have a solid plan. A lot of people like to use Obsidian. I just like to put it on a Google Doc. Like you don't have to have anything fancy. I like to have my setup like this, where I've got my virtual machine or whatever DigitalOcean droplet that I'm using to do an engagement. And then I like to have a Google Doc on the side right here. I like to type in my notes. I like to take screenshots and port them over. Whatever works for you. Whatever. We're going back to broker because like I've got to get off this box. I have got to start a new box. This is going to drive me crazy. I cannot do broker any more than tonight. Please let me get this root flag so I can be done with this one. Kernel exploits. So gives you an idea of like, you know, hey, check this stuff out. So let's just go at it if I can get that smaller. Oh, well, never mind. I gotta get the whole window smaller, not just my terminal. So let's check out our information. We've got, this just gives us our version information we kind of already knew. All of this stuff, we're on a 64-bit system. You know, we can just go through the motions of what this recommendation is. Okay, we're going to look through the version. We're going to look through our issue of our, basically what we're doing is looking through anything that could be exploitable at the kernel level. That's talking about like your Linux kernel. This is probably less likely than going to be the exploit that you would choose, especially on something like Hack the Box or OffSec. Like, that might be something that you would be more interested in if you're on a real engagement. And this is very, very noisy. So if you were trying to be quiet on an engagement, you're in a real life situation, you wouldn't really want to exploit kernels because it's really disruptive. It's really noisy. And part of the purpose of being an offensive security researcher, engineer, whatever you want to call yourself, hacker, you want to be quiet on a system. So, you know, I'm just going through the motions of what these recommendations are because I'm trying to demonstrate that there are ways that you can also research, you know, if you don't know what to do right off the top of your head, there are ways to research and go through what other people have put out and get through some of these processes, even if you've like brain farted or you just are really not sure like how to Prevesk, like you've practiced, but maybe you're on, you know, your OSCP and you're like, shoot, like I got on the box. I was really good at getting on the box, but how do I like, you know, move somewhere else? So I'm trying to demonstrate how to use a resource like an open source blog or something just to go through the motions. So kernel exploits are not going to be very common when you're doing CTFs, and especially because the developers just don't want you to jack up their system as well. So you can check to see what systems are running. I've got Java, I've got Bash. So that's, you know, not Java. I'm not really surprised about because we've got a server online. I've obviously got my bash command. This is my reverse shell that I'm looking at. This is the shell that I'm currently on. That is the command that we input for our XML file that we exploited. If you remember from last time, we were able to get onto this box because we utilize an XML file that we basically maliciously implemented from remote code execution. Okay, so I don't think that there's no SQL, so I'm not going to worry about that. We can look at user installed software. Let's check out any software. It's going to be an LS. Okay. Bin Etsy games include nothing really too surprising here. And I say there's nothing too surprising here. You have to have a base knowledge of what the standard Ubuntu, Windows, whatever operating system that you expect to encounter. You have to have a base understanding of what software is default loaded into it. Because if I see all this stuff here, having interacted with Linux many a time before, I can say, you know, oh, I don't see anything that is too interesting. If I were to see something like, I don't know, Bin Etsy games Jake or something like that. Like I'd be like, like the user local Jake file seems interesting because I don't know of another Linux software that has like a Jake file. That's just an example, but you do have to have a base knowledge of what I would just say get a general understanding of every operating system that you could encounter, which is going to be Linux. It's probably going to be a Debian or, like I would say it's going to be a Debian or a BSD more than likely. You're going to have, CentOS and stuff in Red Hat here and there. Just get a general understanding of what those operating systems look like. And Windows just is like kind of Windows. It just is. So what I'm doing now is I'm just like going through, seeing everything that's, we already looked at some of these files because we found the user.txt file. More likely than not, this, root flag is going to be in the root directory, which is going to be needed to be accessed by root. And so what we are looking for right now is we're just perusing the operating system to see what things are installed on it so we can exploit them to maybe either get root access or to like execute stuff as a root user, which may allow us to, open root's directory, for example, without being root. We could still be this ActiveMQ user, but open roots files. So that's what we're looking for right now. So I'm just LSing all of the recommended directories to see like if there's anything interesting. I don't see anything. I'm pretty sure this is a Debian architecture, so I'm going to do this D package instead of these two, and just kind of like glaze over it. This is a lot of information, but more likely than not, this is irrelevant for a CTF. At least they're not going to have you digging through like that much data. So we can also look through. What I did see was I saw a where was it? I saw a www.data, and I knew that would be there because we're running on a web server. And a lot of times when you're able to hack into a system via a web server, you're usually going to go into the operating system as www.data. Where did I see that? Okay, so in this bar directory, there's a www, and then I do remember that when we were in se.passwd, there's a www.tac user, which is very common when you're running a server on a Linux system because you are running the server on port 80 or whatever port. You're running it on HTTP or HTTPS. That's like your www TAC data. We were able to access via ActiveMQ, which is the service running on that port. So those are two separate things. www TAC data may be something that we can like leverage. I don't know, but just keeping that in mind, that when you're looking at the next person's recommendation of weak reuse passwords, config files, things like that, like there is a www data file that we can maybe look at configurations for, the server itself. So let's just see if we can go and check out if anything is interesting in that, in anything like that. So I don't know if it will be of interest. But we do know that there is a file here that is this index file. Maybe it'll have, and oftentimes there's an Apache config file that will have some potentially interesting password information. So you can look in there, but one step at a time. So I just catted out, the Nginx server front page. Yep, as expected, didn't really think of anything. So we know that there's an Apache server running on this system. Let's find where the Apache default configuration file is usually hosted. It's like I've looked that one up before. Weird. All right. So Etsy Apache 2 HTTP conf. So let's see if there's because sometimes it will fall under just Apache and not Apache 2. I don't want to pull every single. Oh, golly. Okay. Let's see. Apple, awk. Apt. Let's see. Audit, of course. Let's see if there's even an Apache. Cannot access Apache. Apache 2 does not exist. Okay. So we can look up other places too, like HTTP D or HTTP. And if those don't work, that's fine. Let me just list out what's in Etsy real quick. Let's see if there's anything. I would be looking for like an HTTP that I misspelled, or again, Apache or something like that. So there's nothing on there. Also, another thing that we could look at is we know that there's ActiveMQ on here. We could look for like an Etsy file on that. So I don't see anything here, so that's fine. So we're going to go back over here. We're probably not going to find anything here. I highly doubt that there's anything on var spool mail because this is a CTF file and likely not anything that we would be looking in the mail in any sort of like, there's probably like no mail capacity on this fake system in a real world environment, possibly. So let's look at netstat is our next recommendation. And we're going to look at just what is, I like to look at this side of things and this line that shows me what port and what service is running off of. I see there's Java. I see that there, this is, if you were looking at this is the process ID associated with Java. I don't see anything super interesting. They all look like pretty mundane, information that would come, pretty standard on your Linux box if you're hosting a web server, for example. Again, same thing. Not seeing anything. Didn't expect to see anything. If you don't see anything on this one, you're likely not going to see anything on that one either. ANLP, or however you want to, enumerate those, that you could do LNAP or, whatever. They're all going to give you the same thing. Okay, so I already looked at the SUIDs and the GUIDs. Well, we can look at, tapped my microphone. So this is where, we already did the SUID already did turning my volume down because I can't see my keyboard if I don't pull it out far enough. So we already did the SUID, so let's just do the GUID. And the reason why they say it's like TAC U equals S, this is just the TAC. This is saying TAC at minimum. The user is assigned a SUID. Same, and this says, you know, I'm looking for the type of, it sounds stupid. I'm going to say the type of the file is a file, but it's like the type we are looking for is a file. That just didn't sound right the first way. So in this one, the group is assigned a SUID. And at minimum, it's assigned the SUID. And then everything else is great. You know, everything else, if you want to assign the rest of everybody a SUID, great. But I, at minimum, want to see what groups are assigned SUID. So I didn't look at that's called a GUID or a GUID file. You don't need to do the type. It will just reduce the number of things you're looking at, but I'll just do it just for the sake of sanity. Also going to put all of those additional things that I don't want to see, all those permission denieds. I don't care. I don't want to see them. So I looked at SUIDs. Now let's go back. GTF opens. You can look at, you can go back to the SUIDs again and see if there's anything on here. You can do it even for GUIDs. That's just the way that it's labeled in Linux. So SUID and GUID are interchangeable. Just understand that one is assigned to a user or, you know, something user parallel, and a GUID is like a group. So wall SSH, there were too many S's in that. So there is an SSH agent for a SUID. So that's maybe something that we can keep in mind right there. Write.ul expiry. Cron tab. And again, like, I know we've already identified stuff, but I like to look through and see if there's anything else that I might, you know, maybe miss down the road. Again, once we get past, you know, user bin, I'm not really concerned about sbin. Unix, those wouldn't even be like, I'm not really too worried about those. So anyway, so we can look at this SSH agent and see if there's anything that we can come of that, because this specifically says SUID, but there's a lot of times where these things are interchangeable. So it's something that we might want to be cognizant about, where something might work for one thing, but it also may work for another thing, especially when you consider that the majority of users are assigned, like, users are assigned to a group. So if a major group, a large group on a system has access to something, more likely than not, like the user that you're, affiliated with when you get on the box is going to be, could potentially be assigned to that, that group. And, we can ls al and see what group, what did we say? There's not a bin. What group that, so we've got, see how the SUID is assigned to the group. So this is the owner group user, I think. Oh gosh, that really gets me. Linux permissions. Let's look through. Yeah, I want to look at this one. I don't care about the permissions itself. It's just the breakdown. I had it backward. It's user group others. Others. It was not owner. So this is going to be the user, the group, and then others, and then this is going to be the owner, I believe. Anyway, I digress. So it says that this is going to be potentially exploitable to individuals in a certain group. So let's just assume that we're a part of that group. We can read through here and say it can be used to break out of restrictive environments by spawning an interactive shell. That's great. That's what we're trying to do. We are in a restrictive environment. We are currently ActiveMQ. We want to be a root user or be able to do things at a root level. So let's just, give this a go. If the binary has the SUID bit set, it does not drop the elevated privileges. So it might be able to be abused to access the file system. So it gives you a good example of what you would do if the SUID was exploitable. So let's see if we can. Let's give the first option a go. Oop, maybe I should type correctly. So I'm still ActiveMQ. I'm still in this opt ActiveMQ bin, but I am not working in the same shell that I was. You can tell this because I did SSH agent bin shell. I went through, and now you're seeing that I'm not getting the same bash. I'm getting a shell itself. So I'm in if you do not understand Linux, there are many different, I guess, sometimes it's interchangeable when you speak very generically, but a bash shell and shell itself are two different things. Shell does not specifically translate correctly to bash. So it's just different. Bash typically has this $sign right here. You usually don't have that interaction with a shell environment when you're on a Linux system. So it's just different. So that's why I double checked, because if I'm going to look here and I'm going to run, this SSH agent, this could give me a shell that is like, I'm working in shell right now, which is a slightly different language than bash. Or sometimes it will show you that you have, I'm like trying to connect to, that's a really weird question. Do I smoke? I smoke you and hack the box, that's for sure. Whatever. Anyway. It's like if you sometimes break out into a root, if you are able to get something in while you're in something like this where you have your $sign and you're running your commands, and you might end up getting into something like this where you don't have anything before you're just running commands and getting output. You could be root, but you just have to double check to see where you're at, because it really doesn't show you or give you very good discretion on who you actually are unless you ask the system. It's a little confusing, especially if you're already embedded in a reverse shell like I am. For example, if I tap the up arrow, I get this weird, like upper caret, bracket, AD or A, whatever, you could do C, whatever, if you're tapping arrows. Typically in a normal bash environment, if you tap those arrows, you can go up your history of commands that you've done. You can, move across, I'd be able to like move my cursor over here. You can't do that in these restricted environments. So that's basically all I'm trying to get at, is understanding how to ensure you know where you're at and what environment you're working with. Okay. Did I catch up on all of the stupid comments that relate to it's whatever. Comments are great and I appreciate them, but like very, very comical. Okay, gotta reshift my focus. So if we're going back to the SUID and saying that this might be something that we can utilize to break out of our restricted shell. If this one, and this is not one that I've used frequently, so I'm kind of reading up on it as I'm going through it. If this one is used to run shell tac p, omit the p argument on systems like Debian, which I know that I'm on a Debian, that allow the default shell to run with SUID privileges. This example creates a local SUID copy of the binary and runs it to maintain elevated privileges. Okay. So let's see if I can. I don't want to exit out of this because it's going, but I'm already in the shell. Let's see if I can get back into a bash shell. It's probably not going to work. Yeah, I could try ID as well. Yeah, and I honestly wasn't really concerned about figuring out like what group I was a part of. I guess I probably should be a little more when I figure out that there's like a GUID and stuff. It just, in my mind, I just go straight to whatever I'm attempting to execute before assuming. I just typically tend to assume, especially with CTFs, and that's probably it's bad form when you're doing engagements, that it's almost like a people processes thing where you're like, okay, if someone reuses their password on 5 different user accounts, it's safe to say that they've probably used that on the system. Oh my gosh. It's safe to say that they've probably used that on their 6th one, not the system. Oh my goodness. So it's like that's kind of my mentality often, is like, okay, if it makes sense, it's more likely than not probably true. I'm sorry, I'm just reading up on the comments and trying to digest. I'm not sure. So I'm assuming that YouTube has like emojis themselves, but in my chat it shows that someone just put person turquoise waving speech. I'm assuming that's an emoji, but I could not figure out what that was. Yeah, absolutely, Daniel. I totally agree. It's like, I wouldn't say it's a gut feeling, but it's just like if you've seen it enough times, you kind of assume that like something is going to be right versus more likely than not, like for me, it saves me time. For someone getting into this kind of stuff is probably not the best methodology, just because I've done this so much and I've seen it enough times. I even tend to fall into like the cockiness and the arrogance, just because I do this stuff repetitively. And yeah, So anyway, let's just get back to it. So, we're on this SUID. Okay, let me get back. I need to get out of this this shell, which is, I hope, not going to exit me out of the whole reverse shell. It's fine if it does. I'll just get back into it, but it's just kind of annoying. Yep, it did. Okay. So that's fine. So I have an HTTP server. I implemented my reverse shell into a netcat listener. That was what I didn't do. Okay, so we're back in. So that's fine. Yeah, and I have heard that too. If you just like throw it at the wall and see if it sticks, that's the best way to do it. Can't give you any better advice than that, because that's pretty much what I hear from everybody, and I agree. Yeah, I agree. So I'm gonna go through and use this sudo command and see if that gives me any impact. And notice there's a space between the parentheses and that period. That period, it means it's installing whatever it's installing to your installing to your current directory. So the period means like, I want it in this directory. And that didn't bode well for me, because it says that a terminal is required to read the password. Boo-hoo. That's fair. Okay, so I don't have a terminal. I have a reverse shell. So this might not be the escalation that we need. So let's move on. I'm going to move this over. Nope. I'm going to move my... Hopefully y'all can still see that. So now I'm just going to go through the list of... if you have... just going through the list of other Prevest techniques. If you have a limited shell that has access to some programs using sudo... Oh gosh, what is the... Again, this is such a simple command. If you'll have it, let me know. But it's like trying to find out what my sudo privileges are. Oh gosh, I just want to know what is my sudo privileges in Linux. Probably nothing with a sudo tag v. Let's see. I don't think that's not the one that I remember. I want to know what directories and commands I have the authority to use. Probably nothing, I assume, as an active MQ user. Usually it's like if you're like Chuck or Bob or whatever user, like if you're an actual user. Sudo tag L. Okay, thank you. Okay, so I can use no password in user sbin and Nginx. That's helpful. And also, I'm not, okay. No password. So that just means that I don't need a password. That last command, this one right here, when I was trying to sudo install, it says a terminal is required to read the password. I don't have a terminal. However, can I run something without a password? That was my thought process of like, okay, how can I run something without a password? I don't mean run something without a password. I mean what permissions do I have to things that I would not have to input a password into. And now that I see that there's a directory that I can do any sudo command in, I can go and figure out, what I could do to escalate the privilege in that directory. So that's good. And that's probably going to be in GTF opens too. I just haven't gotten there yet. Let's see if I can bring it back. I cannot remember in GTF opens what exactly the term is when you can run commands from a file. Because you would need to be, so let's just like get in, we can get into that file because we're user sbin in Jinx. Not a directory. Oh, but you can run it on, that's a file itself. So I can cd into, and I could sudo nginx. Well, maybe if I could spell it right. And then I wanted to put dir like I'm on a Windows box. No passwords to do. User bin in Jinx. It's totally possible that there is a delay on here. And honestly, I think my iPad keeps timing out. So it's showing that there is live video going, but the comments that I'm getting from the chat are like slow, and they're not working as intended. So I'm gonna try to pull that back up. I think my iPad's just timing out, so let's just try to, and honestly use my iPad for stuff over my MacBook because the display is better. How strange. Do you mind making the terminal font a few sizes larger? Oh yeah, absolutely. Thanks for the suggestion. That's going to be, oh, I remember how to do this too. Zoom in. Yeah, thank you for that, because I never know how it actually looks. Hopefully that's good. Let me know if that is too small. Yeah, that should be good. Oh, golly gee. Okay, cool. Okay, hopefully that's bigger. Thanks for that. I hope that I'm gonna make it bigger because I'm like now concerned that nobody can see it. I want to make sure that you all can see it. Okay. So I want to exploit a file. So I'm using sudo rights. I'm not concerned about this. Let's see if I can go through and basically I know that I have sudo rights to execute a specific file. There are exploits that you can do to manipulate those permissions. I cannot remember what it's called specifically. That's why I'm drawing a blank on what it would be. If you have a file, you can sudo, but you can also add commands to the end of it or like pipe commands to it. There's something specifically that you can do. And man, I gotta stop using my iPad because I can't see the comments. So just disappointed. It worked really great the first 2 times, and then it just keeps freezing. So that kind of stinks, but it's his technology. I mean, anybody who's watching this knows that that is 100% what we deal with on a daily basis. So no iPad for you. No display. All right, well. Whatever. Not going to worry about it. I'm not too concerned about it right now. If you guys are dropping me comments, I will try to go over and check to see that I'm not missing stuff. Okay, cool. And sorry that I'm trying to switch over to my OBS studio, so you might have seen me switch and just see, like, you know, my Security Rex logo, and it's just like, so anyway, so we have no password rights to file. If I could spell tonight, it's 10:30 on the East Coast, and I cannot spell. No password rights to file in Linux. Privilege escalation. Let's do that. Weak file permission. That's probably the word that I was looking for. I'm not looking for Etsy password. Etsy pass WD, excuse me. So again, like using Medium because they have pretty good write-ups on certain things. If I could... Oh my goodness, what was the... Am I not spelling it right? Nginx. Nginx. I mean, it's Nginx, but... Nginx. Nginx. Okay. We'll try that one more time. Because I'm... Okay. So there's read, write, execute, read and execute, which is expected for the user and the group. I don't want to sit through a whole Medium article about that. So let's see if I can narrow it down to Nginx file and see if there's something specific to this software or something similar that I might be able to utilize this. You can run the following command. So command bin shell sudo php our system. So this person says when you run the command of sudo tag l and you see no password user bin php, it means that your user account has been granted special privileges to use that file. And yep. So to utilize that privilege for PHP to gain root access, you can run the following command. Command bin shell sudo php tag our system command. So we could probably just do something like that and maybe try that. Yeah, let's just give it a go. Let's assign command bin shell. Let's see, CMD is bin shell. Okay, let's sudo nginx tag our system. Oh, we need to establish its CMD. Yeah, it's because Nginx doesn't have that tag R well, let's see if we can just do sudo without the tag R. And maybe there's something that we can do instead of the tag R. Yeah, so it's telling me can't do the system in shell. But there is definitely, we don't have sudo access to PHP. Yeah, it's not because we have sudo access to PHP. It's the general concept of trying to use weak file permissions to execute on sudo. So that was the first thing that it brought up when I was looking up, like no, privilege escalation for this Nginx service. It's not because I specifically am concerned about PHP, because we don't have access to PHP. It's just the general concept of trying to exploit, a file and use those weak privileges. So that's why when we're seeing, hey, I don't have a attack R and I can't do bin shell, that just shows that like the process is not going to be the same for this service. It could have been, but because we don't have those arguments to go with this specific service, we can't utilize that. So if it's beneficial to know how to do that, or at least to try to work with what's out there if the service is not specific, because sometimes there's the same, it's like same but different sort of thing. So as I'm scrolling through, as I'm scrolling through these, I'm not seeing any but this Hacktricks one, and I wonder if this is one I saw way back when. I don't remember seeing this on this specific video, but this could be something that I had looked at previously. So that being said, was just trying to give a go to something that was similar but not necessarily the same. And you're absolutely right. We don't have sudo permissions to PHP. It's just part of the research aspect of, trying to figure out what the right thing to do is. Because sometimes you're not going to come across the first right thing. Oh, okay. So now we're looking at the Nginx root directory, and I might actually have another idea too. I'm kind of looking at my notes right here. Okay, so this might be something that we can utilize, this Nginx root directory. This says that in this configuration, etc Nginx, and I don't know if I'm pronouncing that acronym right, don't care. In this configuration, this file is designated as root. So we should be able to, let's see if we have an etc. For one, let's see if we have an etc Nginx. Okay, we do. Nice. Cool. So that being said, let's see if we can utilize this article to help us get through to root. Cool. Let's see if we have nano on this system. We do. Thank goodness. I hate Vim. Ugh. Yuck. Okay. It's I want to exit out of here. Oh no. I'm stuck now because I have to use Vim. Because if I press command, it's going to exit me out of the entire shell, which stinks. So I'm going to have to use a different text editor. The reason why I'm going to have to use a text editor is because this is telling me that there is likely a file that I need to edit to do something with. So, all right. So this setup allows us to access files within a specific directory called hello text. Okay, it's crucial to note that only a specific location is defined. There's no configuration for the root location. So this means that the root directive applies globally, which just means that it just accesses all files under this etc Nginx. So let's look at the misconfiguration. Let's see what the actual file looks like itself. Since we know that there's an etc Nginx directory. Don't know why this is in my recommended or even what you're talking about. What's the subject? I'm hacking your systems, so if you want to stick around, do so. VI, I hate VI. I'm sorry. The box that I'm working on is broker on Hack the Box. I have done the user flag. I'm doing the root flag right now. So no, it's not Proving Grounds. It's Hack the Box. Okay, so we've got some files. It looks like this specific article is going to, and I hope that y'all can see this as well. Now I'm like self-conscious on wanting to make sure I zoom in and make sure that you can read all of this information as well. This needs to be very accessible for anybody that's watching. So the setup allows access to files within the specified root directory, such as hello.txt. So we need to, I'm just looking over it right now and trying to process what this specific exploit is telling me to do. So there's a file located at etc Nginx conf. Looks like we have that. Okay. Setting the root to a less sensitive directory like etc could mitigate this risk. Let's see what that has us directed to. Let's see what our current setup, has us directed to. Oh, it's a lot of information. Let's just start from the top. We catted it out. We've got the information that the users, that www tag data that I was talking about before, which is just our server user. It's going to be run under this PID. Okay, got it. The misconfiguration is located at, it looks like, somewhere in here. I need to go through and look to see where this location, which is application, because it looks like we might have to edit this file to direct to some specific place that we want it to go. Because it tells us how to mitigate this vulnerability. That's great. I want to exploit it. So we're going to go server. We're going to look for the server spot. So this is events, HTTPS, mail. Just got to look through and see. I guess maybe this is something that we might want to add to it if it doesn't currently have what we're looking for. This could be something that we needed to add to this. So let's see. Okay. Ah, gosh. I gotta run the exploit again. I'm looking through the comments right now. The configuration file, missing root location. I just need to put this on another screen because I would like to look at the comments without having to show you my desktop every single time. And I just wish it would display. I think you're right about the... Go over there. It just doesn't want to work. There you go. I think you're right about the root location being maybe a directory traversal. But what I think is that there's something that we can exploit within the configuration file directory that might be useful to us as far as maybe implementing a new configuration file. I'm not quite sure. It's why I would like to dig into this a little more. And I don't want to sit and ponder over what the possibilities might be right now while I've got everybody online. So I think I'm going to take a step back tonight and look over what specifically, as much as I want to get this root one done because it's driving me bonkers and I'm tired of being on broker. It'll be my third finale of broker. I need to step back and look. I am 99.9% sure that this Nginx vulnerability is how we can privask. I'm just not exactly sure in what capacity. And unfortunately, is the nature of offensive security of just doing research to figure out what the right answer is. And you see a little bit of it on here now, but there is a lot of offline work that goes into figuring out what right actually is. And it's not pretty. It's tedious and it's kind of boring, and it's not necessarily something that people like, we can cutscene all day long and say, look at me, I hacked this box in 30 minutes, but it doesn't work like that. You've got to go through and you've got to go through the process and try a couple configurations and try a couple of exploits. And if they don't work, you move on to something else. And then all of the write-ups are really beautiful and they look great. And they're like, yeah, like that was super easy. And it took them like a week or two to finish them. So I am going to wrap this up for tonight. This one specifically, we will finish broker. Oh my gosh. Like this one is just this one's been pissing me off, but we will get through it, and we'll get through it in the next one, because if I can just get this stinking privask, figure out what we need to do, then we can go from there. We can get the root flag and we can move on to something else. So I think that's it for me tonight. And yeah, thanks for tuning in. I really appreciate the comments and the feedback, and the interaction is incredibly helpful. And hopefully this gives you an opportunity to see, I'm not trying to glamorize how difficult some of this stuff can be. Like, this is real life, and I've been working in this for some time now, and it is still difficult for me when I approach something that's new that I haven't seen before. And that's what's fun about it, and that's what's enjoyable about it, but it does suck, and it is it's just not as glamorous as a lot of people like to make it seem. So hopefully this is real life depiction of what goes on behind the scenes of when you're doing these CTFs or hack the box or red team engagements, whatever you want to call it. So I'm off for tonight. I will see you guys soon, and I will get this box next time. So have a good evening.